Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Investor's Guide to Joy. Today I interview Randy Smith. We first met at a Jason Drees event in Austin, Texas. Jason is a mindset coach who's been transformational in my life, and we've kept in touch in a number of different other communities and aspects, as in GoBundance and also fundraising. Randy fundraises for using fund of funds in a number of different projects, from multifamily to single family rentals in the short-term rental space. And so we've been able to connect in a lot of different aspects as I raise funds in luxury short-term rentals and oil and gas. Three things that were the biggest takeaways for me in this episode were the communities that we surround ourselves with, how bucket lists can transform the communication and the trust we have with other people, and imposter syndrome. It's something that we'll always feel, but do we actually have to always feel that we're an imposter? Are we not just growing and learning in the process? Are we not trying, achieving, and giving ourselves permission to also go after the bucket list items or create that new position or opportunity, try that new hobby? It was a fascinating realization. Lastly, with communities, it was interesting to reflect on not just the people that are around us and the average of how we are those, five people we surround ourselves with and the communities we surround ourselves with, but also the language that those people use. It's one thing to be around people who are very high achieving or great in their area of work or their, personal life, but it's also the words they use when success happens to you or trials happen with you. For example, if you were laid off from your corporate job, do these people say, "What an amazing opportunity for you to go explore and learn what's next"? Or, "I'm sorry"? Now, there's definitely some empathy and sympathy with the fact that you were just let go, most likely unexpectedly. But the frame reference of how those people are showing up and supporting you gives then you affirmation for what you can and should, in my opinion, really go for. I've had a couple times where I've been laid off, let go, fired, the like, and they've been truly transformational into my next season of life. And so if there's one thing that I would say to take away, in addition to what you'll take away from this episode, it's not only the words that you use, but the power of positivity can really transform someone's life for what they could go after next. Imagine if you were the reason why your positive attitude for giving someone permission and giving them that opportunity for them to give themselves permission to go after the dream that they've always wanted to do, but wasn't really sure if they just got laid off or fired or let go. That would be, I believe, an incredible opportunity to start that journey. So keep encouraging others, give others space to allow them to stay and be focused in their zone of genius and have a great time doing it. Here's the episode. All right, hey everyone, welcome to the Investor's Guide to Joy. So I have Randy Smith here, who has been a fascinating person to watch, but get to know over the years. So Randy, thanks for coming on. Excited to have you tell your story and also share with what you've been up to and what you can do. I think that's the other main reason why I was really excited to reach out to you. I don't know what you can't do. Maybe we'll learn today what you're going to do next. But thanks for coming on.
Yeah, Paul, thanks so much for having me on the show. It's been fun to get to know you and kind of watch your path over the last couple of years as well. So thanks for having me.
You bet. Yeah, everything's a joyous nature. So wanted to start off from us meeting from Jason Drees conference, right, in Austin. I think one thing that was fascinating was just how, in that conference or maybe other type of conferences, I don't follow you around, so I'm not sure all the things you've been exposed to, what sort of things kind of happen, right? Because you had a number of breakthroughs at some of those conferences, like either, specifically or maybe even like in general, kind of where were you at? Because you were about to leave corporate, or what kind of timeline was that sort of in?
Yeah. So it's interesting. I joined that community, I believe, in January of 22. And that was just as a kind of a general admission participation at that point, some online training. And had been in my corporate America job, coming up on 25 years at that point. So various companies, but primarily a sales guy or sales leader for most of those years. I certainly was feeling the grind. I was feeling some burnout. I was ready to make a change of some sort and joined that community just for the mindset aspect of it. And I had never spent a dime on an event like that before. I had bought books and tapes and CDs on mindset type stuff, Tony Robbins stuff, but had never paid for this kind of event or participation in my life. So it was a new experience for me. And fortunately, I was pretty deep with that community when I got laid off in June of 22.
Mhm.
And the community kind of surrounded around me and gave me the support I needed to launch my first business and join the entrepreneurial space. So it was a pivotal time in my transformation, and it was just really valuable to be there.
Sure, you bet. So did you hit the 25-year mark?
It was right there. Yeah,
Just
I'd
about?
have
Okay.
to like really dig in, but it's probably plus or minus a few months. So yeah.
I was going to say then, how'd you celebrate your, 25th year? And it seems like it was celebrated for you of, hey, here's the, kind of the next path in life.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's funny too. I think you can tell the type of person you're talking to because a lot of people are like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I feel so bad," and then there's the other folks that are congratulations. They want to give you a high five,
Mhm.
when you get laid off from corporate America. So it was good to be around that group of folks for sure.
Well, congrats. I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, glad to be
So,
here.
I mean, you mentioned, grind and burnout, right? And that often happens, I think, with very, successful people, right? Especially in the sales world, right? I started in the sales world and it was just challenging to take time off because then you wouldn't hit your quota. And at least some of the managers I had at the time was just like, yeah, absolutely take as much time, do what you need, but also hit your quota. It's like, how do you square peg round pull this, right? So, over the 25 years, especially to someone like, I'm thinking to myself, like, I have like a decade of not even formal corporate. It's been back and forth and craziness, right? But just someone who's thinking of like 25 years, that's, so much, so long, something like that. And you're grinding kind of through that. What sort of perspectives did you have through that? Was that the constant pace and tempo through the entire time? What was, yeah, really just that like experience, right? Because not everyone has
Yeah.
that in and of itself.
Yeah, I think there are seasons that you go through, and there are seasons when you put your head down and you grind, and there are seasons where you do what you got to do to get by. So it's hard to really summarize the whole thing. But I'm a type A personality guy. I've been a
Okay,
guy who's performed at a high level
sure.
for a number of years. I probably have bigger expectations on myself than any leader ever put on me, and just that drive to achieve and accomplish was always with me. So certainly it wasn't the same throughout. It was not a constant effort, but there were seasons, definitely. Seasons of intentionality, I hear. I like that phrase.
Okay. What do you think of the thought of balance? And what I mean by balance is there's, a number of quotes out there that are essentially like great things happen in the extremes, right? But if you were to
Yep.
say, hey, clock in at 9, clock out at 5, just do those things consistently showing up is absolutely beneficial. But again, those kind of seasons and those sort of extremes, what have you, how did you balance the seasons is really what the question is.
Yeah. So, it's interesting. I've had different phases of my life, and probably having to do with family dynamics and health and relationship changes, those types of things where balance becomes more important. But I think balance is a verb. It's an ever-changing target. I think Brandon Turner uses the analogy of the wagon wheel, where you have these 7 or 10 or 15, whoever, depending on who you're talking to, these call it 7 life areas. And if
Mhm.
any one life area is out of whack, then the wagon wheel is a pretty bumpy ride. But no doubt there are times when career needs more energy, attention, focus. There are times when relationships need more energy, attention, focus, whether that's your kids or your spouse or your parents, whatever that is. So I think, and I've heard somebody say too, there's like 2 or 3 main areas of your life, like pick 2 that you want to focus on. And I was always the guy where I wasn't willing to give up on any one area or to sacrifice in one area to have tremendous abundance in one area. I think the well-rounded life is the happy life,
Mhm.
but certainly you've got to spend more time and energy on certain areas at different seasons in your life. So yeah.
How did you approach that wagon wheel? I'm thinking about, is it reactionary? Is it proactive? Does it, depend? Certainly with relationships, hey, I, need more time, right? Like there's a vocal, communicative, specific, well, actually that's non-specific, but just, hey, pay attention to me, right? And so sometimes it is, yes, like, yes, here, let's, do this, navigate that. What is your general just approach to it? Is it proactive, reactive? Does it depend on the thing or the season or the
Sure.
like depth of relationship even or
Yep. Well, and I will tell you that this has been a moving target. This has changed over time. Certainly in the past, I would go all in on one area until I essentially was breaking other areas. And then it would very quickly become apparent that I needed to spend more time and energy on those other areas.
Sure.
So, I'm a 50-plus-year-old guy now, so I've got a little bit of experience under my belt, and I tend to approach things a little bit differently today, where I know that I have a certain amount of sleep I need to get. I need to eat in a certain way. I need to have a certain amount of exercise. And my, what I call my big R relationships, mom, dad, sister, brother, spouse, and kids, like those big R relationships require attention at regular intervals. And if I start to fail in any one of those areas, my whole ship gets pretty rocky. So it's important for me to be able to focus on all of those areas. Otherwise, Randy doesn't show up as the best version of Randy, which impacts all areas of my life. So
Yeah, no, definitely. So you reminded me of something I heard recently. Curious, what thoughts come back. Maybe you agree or disagree, right? But it was just that, like the big all right type relationships. It's quantity with the big R's, right, and quality with work, and that just opened my eyes to the fact of like it's not just the time, right, or even like time boxing people of, oh yeah, I saw you 2 hours and it's quality time, like let's call it even. But it's again that like consistency of the randomness that is the relationship for the quantity of it. And yeah, anyway, it just reminded me of that. It was just fascinating to share.
well, and I think the intentionality of the time that you spend is critically important. Like I will share with my wife at times where whether I feel we're connected or not has really no impact on whether she feels connected or not. So we can spend a whole weekend together and then she does not feel like we're connected because we've been so busy. So making sure that we have dedicated time is critically important. And, we've started to do some things, and this isn't a relationship show, but something fun that we've started to do
Sure,
is
please, yeah.
we're planning each month. One of us has to plan a fun event that the other person doesn't get a lot of input on. And you pretty much have to say, yes, you're going to go and do it. And, we've had some amazing experiences in the last handful of months just because we're dedicating the time and we're committing to it. And we're allowing the other person to make commitments that are going to put us or pull us out of our comfort zone and do things that we wouldn't normally do. So that's been really fun. And I'm trying to do the same thing with my daughter. And I'm seeking more adventure in other areas of my life as well. So that's been a really nice change.
That's incredible. And so, what has been I mean, you share maybe the most exciting or different or kind of out of the blue thing you've done that you didn't think you like would. But how has that grown or changed like your mindset as well as like your relationship?
Yeah, I mean, the last year has been it's been transformational for me. I joined a group that you and I both are in. I'm in the Go Abundance version as well. And that adventure piece is a big piece of it. But a simple thing with my wife and I, like I have loved skiing my whole life. She loved skiing when she was younger. She had not skied in 25 years and we went skiing this year. We had a blast. We got lessons together and literally we weren't even coming down the mountain yet. And she was planning our next ski trip. So yeah, I think we got to push ourselves sometimes to do uncomfortable things. And we went in a hot air balloon another month, which I'm afraid of heights. So that was a little scary for me, but we had a blast. It was really fun and really just something kind of simple. We went and walked around downtown and looked at murals one day. I never in a million years would have said, hey, that's something I want to go do on a Sunday afternoon.
Sure.
But we had a blast. We had a really good time doing it. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Strapped into a roller coaster. That's exciting. And it makes me think of not just doing uncomfortable things like I think like the ice bath or 75 hard or like other challenges and things and marathons and stuff but also like doing things with encouragement and with support and doing it together, new or experiences that have already been experienced but maybe in different ways or again hey, I've not done this since I was a kid, right? Let's go just do this, try this and then see how it feels and how it goes. For those that are probably thinking more detailed, like I kind of am myself, what have you found on like the tactical side of things? Like, have you guys listed out like, hey, these are the things that are like non-negotiable, like I won't do kind of thing? And then are just like, hey, everything else, like, are you budgeting? it seems like there's a, time cadence, but someone
Yeah.
who's just like more curious about this, like what kind of tactical things have you learned from this? Because I mean, you're already, in the seat, rocking and rolling with this.
Yeah. And great question. We have taken a little bit different mindset on the finance piece. I read a book called Die with Zero recently, which is discussed a lot in the community that we're a part of. And
Yeah, you bet.
that's kind of changed my mindset about some of those things where,
Sure.
I'm no longer like saving for the rainy day or, waiting until some future, predetermined time where I'm going to start living life. Our goal is we want to live life today. You never know if tomorrow's going to come. So,
Sure.
we're booking the trips, we're doing the activities, we're having the adventures, we're investing in relationships. Something from that book I thought was really important, that if just the simple idea where you save our whole life so we have enough money to make it through, our golden years. And either one, we're not in good enough shape to go do the things that we want to do, or two, we end up dying and we never get to use the money. And if we're saving our money to give it to our kids, why not give it to our kids today when they could use it more? Because I'm sure, much like yourself, like, do you want $1 million in 30 years, or would you prefer to have $100,000 to help with the down payment on a house? Like,
Sure.
what's going to give you the ability to enjoy those dollars more? And if you want to give to some type of cause, don't you think they prefer to have your money today versus waiting,
Sure.
another 30 or 40 years till you die? So taking that kind of piece into the financial piece of it is, yeah, we're not going to stress out about the finances of it because the money's there, or we'll find a way to get the money. As far as the maybe a red list or something, we haven't thought that far, and maybe we should.
I mean,
but
I
guess I
your
guess I
relationship,
trust,
right? Yeah.
yeah. I guess I'm going to trust her at this point, but yeah, maybe I should give some thought to that, because there are some things that I certainly would not want to do. But
do you guys have are these like bucket list things, or are these just like, hey, I saw this like article, like what?
Yeah,
how are maybe you approaching this, right? Because you're your only self, right?
Yeah, so I'm a bucket list guy.
Okay.
Skiing is something that's on the bucket list, and travel all of the continents, many different countries, that kind of stuff. My wife is more the creative and the feeler and the empath of the things. So she will see things that just excite her, and next thing you know, that's on the list for next month. So I very much am going down a list of all the things I want to do in this world. She is a little more reactionary to it. So yeah.
What is one thing on your bucket list that you are you think it's going to be the most like challenging, or requires a lot of connections, or is just like a throwing out there, this would be cool, I'm not sure how on earth this could possibly happen? Is there something?
So kind of the big three right now, or I want to visit all the continents. So that is a tough one, right? The first 6 will be fun. The last one will be tough, I suspect.
Sure. Are you going to touch and go, or what's your thought on like being on a continent? Have you defined the rules?
So no, we haven't. It's funny you say that, because we went to Spain a year and a half ago or something, and we took a ferry over to Morocco. So technically, I've been to Africa, but no, we want to go do the big African safari.
Sure.
So the 7 continents, I really have a desire to buy or pay off my mother-in-law's and my mom's homes. So from a financial standpoint, that's something we really want to do. Both were very hard workers their whole lives, and we want to be able to give to them the way that they gave to us for all those years. And then there was a third one. I said the big 3. I have a goal and aspiration to compete at a national level in an athletic event. And, I've done Ironman, I've done a bunch of marathons, I've done the Spartan races, those types of things. So I'm not sure which one it's going to be, but I really need to get going on that, because that gets harder and harder as you get older. So
sure. Yeah. How are you what are you gonna do to celebrate when those houses are paid off, and when you do some sort of national event that you compete in?
I hate to say it, but probably just set another goal.
Okay.
Like they say, they send astronauts off to make sure that they have goals when they come back, because once the goal's achieved, it can be a depressing place to be. And I experienced that when I did Ironman and have done marathons and stuff. So probably just setting bigger, more elaborate goals. I think, not to go spiritual on you, but I feel like God would have us live the most abundant life we can possibly live. I think that's what he would have for me and for others as well. So my goal is to live as big as possible as long as I can. So
yeah, you bet. No, that's so great. And I was so moved by that. I forgot my thought that I had previously. We'll see if it comes back.
Sure.
Because it was Agreed. Right. There's some things that I'm toying with right now where it's like, man, that's big and abundant. What would people think? Would it work? How would it, kind of thinking stuff? Love Excel spreadsheets, right? And
Yeah.
oftentimes just leaning into the unknown is just a fascinating, beautiful thing. And at least for myself, I found that the most incredible, amazing, life-changing things that I've experienced were not planned. They were not necessarily, seen or predicted, right? And so as I think of that thought in the back of my subconscious, that's also a good thing to think about with capital raising, right? And so I first want to do this, kind of sequentially in terms of, how you've experienced life, right? So you mentioned, going to some events, conferences, haven't really spent maybe even $1 on kind of, yourself, if you will, books. I mean, sure, right? Those are kind of gifts, like under $20. I don't think it's really investing in yourself, right? At least for myself, it's been like, I'm worthy of a book. I believe everyone has that capacity of worthiness of book, but a couple $100, couple $1,000, 10,000, tens of thousands of dollars, like on yourself and things that you don't have a set rate, return on investment type of thing. What has that experience, been like? Certainly you're here, right? But can you think of like some of those moments of like right before you gave probably a, credit card, right? Like what was going through your mind? How were you feeling? What were thoughts like? What was that like?
Yeah, I think for me, the big fears that always come up in those situations are one, I don't want to look like a chump and get taken advantage of and then regret it on the back end. Two,
sold by the
like
salesperson. Yeah, I hear you. Yeah,
exactly. Being like sales guys are the worst critics of sales guys.
Yeah.
And being a 25-year sales guy, like
Sure.
I am critical of those things. So
Yeah.
so that one, and then like essentially like what are people going to think of me is always the biggest fear. I don't have the fears of I'm gonna die penniless and I'm not gonna have a place to live or food to eat. I can always go out and make money. That's not ever the issue. It's reputational stuff that really bothers me. So those kind of things come into play, but then the opposite of all of those things as well. Like I don't want to look back and regret not spending the money as well. So, I mentioned I had not spent hardly any money on myself from a professional development standpoint up until that point, but I spent $40,000 that year on programs, on coaching, mentorships, masterminds. I'm probably in the $30,000 range the following year. And oddly enough, as an entrepreneur, I am making less money than I've probably made since I was in my early 20s, but I'm building the foundation, and the foundation requires like resources and a commitment and an attention to things other than W-2 mindset focused mind thought. So I think it's critical to invest in yourself when you're going through transition phases. So,
and balance, I think, is a good word here. How do you then balance the, hey, I am, maybe worthy, I am building the foundation, things like that, and I don't have that like return on investment from just pure blind optimism?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough question, right? And only time will tell whether this strategy is working or not. But, the first year and a half in the business, I would say it's about a break even. We're finally at a point where we're cash flow positive with the business. I have my KPIs that I use as measurements as to whether success is happening or not. And, it's right there, like whether this is moving in the direction that we want it to or not. Mathematically, I can show how the numbers are moving in the right direction and, the future income that'll be generated from the activities up to this point.
Sure.
But it's difficult. When you have the ability to go back to corporate America and make $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year, that's a scary place to be, so, or it's not, I won't say scary. It is, it's difficult because kind of going back to that place where like all these W-2 employees think you're absolutely nuts when you step away from the ideal job, but they don't know what I know about where this is going, essentially. So, yeah.
So what do you remind yourself in those kind of thoughts of like building the foundation or the pieces of like, hey, is this going to kind of work out?
So everything that you do is a learning lesson. It's either a win or a learning lesson. So, the struggles that I heard a quote the other day, like the struggles you're having today are going to be the grand finale of your story tomorrow, right? So it will be, what's shown in the credits, essentially. Like nobody has the amazing mountaintop glory without going through the grind and the hustle and the challenges that get you there. So I'm not willing to lead and live the mediocre life out of fear from going after what I really want to do. So
Yeah, you bet. And I think, yeah, going after what you really want to do is exciting lifestyle, whole nine yards, really alignment, maybe even purpose in some aspects as well.
Yep.
And, creating something out of nothing. You mentioned something earlier that, I think is a good quotable piece, right? We find a way to, get the money, right? And that comes very specifically in raising capital. So certainly that's a good mantra. You're in the right, space for that. What do you maybe want to share more about it? Either perspective or tactical things or mindset, because there have been thoughts of just, well, what do you like, where does it come from, right? Like you just how, right, and there's very tactical sort of thoughts behind it, but it is, I mean, a little bit of an art and a science, or what's the definition in your mind?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I think, there's this idea of giver's gain that I believe in
Cool.
thoroughly, that I feel like if you give enough and you create enough value in this universe, it will come back to you tenfold.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been my experience with everything that I've done. When I was in corporate America, I was the guy who was greeting the new folks to the company and having them put time on my calendar and kind of walking them through, like, here's what I would suggest that you do to see success in your early years here. And spent probably hundreds of hours doing that kind of stuff. And even my boss at the time thought it was crazy that I did it. But that came back and benefited me for years and years while I was in that W-2. And oddly enough, those are the people that are now investing with me. Here it is, sometimes 10, 15. I'm meeting with a guy today that I've not talked to in about 15 years, but we worked together for 10 years and he saw the value that I brought to the organization years and years ago. So the person that you are stays with you and it's remembered and it comes back to benefit you years to come. So I take that same mentality in what I'm doing today. Like, my calendar is wide open. My wife and I talk about this constantly, why I let so many people book time on my calendar. But those relationships that are built during those times, they may or may not invest with me today, but at some point in the future, if I've brought value to them, that will come back to me either from them or from some other source, I'm confident. So
Sure. Do you approach some of these conversations with like, how, could I add value, and kind of like curious and like looking for it? Or is it more, if it comes up like situationally, then you're like, yeah, no, I have a direct person.
yeah, no, I mean, I ask the question quite often, like, how can I bring value to you? Like,
Okay.
before we get off the phone here, even if I'm booking time with them to try to get something from them, I want to know how I can bring value to them, because that rule of reciprocity is something that's true. Like, if you help somebody, they will feel inclined to help you at some point, whether directly or indirectly. So, selfishly helping other people is self-serving as well, oddly
Sure.
enough. So,
Yeah, and there's also the expression of other people have your money, if you will, right? And so it's just talking to other people, and same thing for yourself, right? Like, it's also giving money as well, and it also helps them too. But certainly, it's not about money. You mentioned like training, onboarding, just coaching or supporting as well.
Sure.
It's not just funds; it's also time, intentions, or even like we talked about earlier, encouragement sometimes. So people
absolutely.
just need that. For a lot of the fundraising you've done in the relationships you've built, what has it been like? I would say there's a handful of people I know, probably bushels of people I know, honestly, that are like, I want to raise funds. I want to use other people's money.
Sure.
SEO quotes galore, but I mean, actually in the seat, certainly you have a sales background, so it makes sense as, a capital raiser, but just, what comes to mind on, sharing the experience you've had the past couple of years, and really what it's been like in, the seat.
Yeah, so it's, taking investor capital is, you need to be very confident you're not going to lose people's capital in order to take it. And if you are going to take it, you've got to be willing to put your own dollars up there as well. And then if things don't go as planned, you've got to find a way to make that right and make it whole. So I think it's important, if you're coming into this space, that you need to have your own experience and you need to have your own story as to why you're the right guy to be doing what you're doing. I think there's far too many people in the space that have no business taking other people's money. They've not invested themselves personally, and they're certainly not experts enough to do the due diligence on deals that needs to be done before you start placing capital. So the thing I always tell to people when they want to start raising capital, I ask if they've invested. If they haven't, I say, stop what you're doing and find a way to make some money so you can invest it yourself. So you know what it's like to wire 25, 50, or $100,000 to some random person that you've never met face to face. You can't possibly be empathetic to the person who's wiring that money unless you've done it yourself.
Yeah.
So once you do that, I think, this business, like most businesses, is based on relationships. So you have to have longstanding relationships with the people that you're working with, both as an investor and as an operator as well. So this space is not a get rich quick space. It's a long-term play that require, businesses with systems and process and resources to make sure that you can be sustainable for the long haul.
Sure. Yeah. It reminds me of the expression of base hits, right? You're
Yeah.
getting those base hits and you're having things stack and that
Yeah.
consistency. And again, like you mentioned, the foundation. There's also a good opportunity, I think, to reiterate the intentionality aspect, right? Again, it's not just good operators and funds that are attractive to investors, but also the intentionality of why you're doing it, how you're doing it, and sometimes saying, hey, I don't think, or this fundamentally is not like the best thing for you, and I won't take your money, right? Like because it's not personality or other things galore, that it's a good separator on again why you're doing it, and it's not a wealth piece, it's a service, and like you mentioned, intentional piece. What is that then for individuals who want to get into raising capital or play kind of this long game? Have you found it challenging to I guess learn how to raise capital? Is there really not a lot to learn? It's more just like execute. Like how do people, I don't want to even say like start out, because you did mention, which I think I absolutely echo, like send those types of funds to a really silly good operator. And there's a number of books that I can include here in terms of like resources, but what other kind of pieces would you say to people who want to get into it, to encourage them, but also to detract them, right? To say, hey, this is what it takes, this is what you're going to do, things like that.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, if you come to this with the heart of helping and for creating opportunity for folks, then I think that's the right intention behind it. This type of business, like anything worth doing, is going to be difficult. It's not going to be easy. There is certainly a grind to this process where, sometimes there are days when I've got 12 or 15 calls on the calendar. And, if you wake up with an upset spouse or a kid that doesn't want to get to school, that it gets a little hard to get excited to hop on that first call, but you've got to do the reps, and it's really just a numbers game. So over time, you start to establish, what your KPIs are and how many people you got to talk to and how many presentations you've got to do to get the number of commitments that you need to hit your numbers. So this is not a business for the faint of heart by any means. And this, I share quite often, like I've never worked so many hours and worked as hard for so little money on the front end in my entire life. But the payoff will be big on the back end if it goes as planned. So it's hard to say, like, what do you say to somebody to detract them from it or to encourage them to? I think salespeople do very well in this role, but I think really all you need is high integrity and be a fairly smart person and be willing to invest in yourself, invest in your business on the front end, and know that it's going to be a long game. It's a 3 to 5 year play before you're going to see any real income on the back end. So.
Yeah, you bet. Let's get some integrity sheets out to some capital raisers. Makes sense. So one thing that I think would be absolutely imperative for you to, talk through or share, as things might come up, is the topic of imposter syndrome, right? So you're in a number of like capital raising groups, right? And a capital raiser like yourself. And again, stepping out kind of from, I guess, really the boat that was, and the rug that was like pulled out from under you, right? Hey, well, you're no longer, at this company. What has that been, like? How do you manage that? Like, I mean, there's a number of questions around this, but just like imposter syndrome, like open floor, talk about it. What comes on your heart?
So it's a real deal. It's something that I struggle with. It's something I think every entrepreneur struggles with. Even the biggest and the best have somebody else that they're looking at that they're feeling like an imposter. They have the imposter syndrome going as well. So what I remind myself is that every single person had a first year entrepreneurship experience. Everybody had a first 5-year entrepreneur experience as well. They all look a little bit different, but every entrepreneur out there has had struggles. I've never met an entrepreneur that didn't have the same imposter syndrome that you're talking about. Now, I've never met like Elon Musk or Bill Gates or something like that, but I suspect at some point they did as well. And I think it's important just to understand that it's going to take time and you're going to have to work harder than you've ever had to work before. But if you do, like, the results can be really amazing. So I'm at this interesting space where I've been doing this for a couple of years, and I go to conferences and people recognize me and know me from podcasts and being on panels and things like
Cool.
that. And it's interesting. It plays on the ego, because everybody wants to be recognized and acknowledged.
Sure.
But deep down, I know what I'm capable of, and I'm still far short of what that is. So I've got a really long way to go, but certainly helps to have some recognition and acknowledgement along the way as well. So
How would you define your capability? Is that like the reps you're doing or like the sets you're doing? And again, kind of a gym analogy, or is it like, capital raised, or, I mean, are these KPIs? Like what does that look like?
yeah, so that's a really good question. So one thing I learned through like doing Ironman, doing marathon, doing those types of things is that, yeah, I mean, if you look at me, if I were to stand up and turn around, like I'm not an overly fit person. I'm kind of like the short, fat, bald guy is what it is. But what I know at my core is that if I make a decision to do something, there is literally nothing in this world that I cannot do. And I've learned that repeatedly from some of the challenging things that I've done in the past. So this business that I'm focusing on, I will be one of the best in this space at some point. And I'm not saying that to brag, but I'm saying that maybe to be my own cheerleader. But I know that, historically when I've made those decisions that I end up accomplishing those goals. So I don't know if that's going a little above and beyond, but certainly not trying to sound like a bragger, but I know myself well enough to know that. So
Yeah, so I don't think it is, and here's why. If someone were come to me and say, "Hey, can you lift that 20-pound weight 20 times?" I would say, "Absolutely, let me do it with my eyes closed," right? Because I've done it 1,000 times.
Yep.
There's, a difference kind of between a confidence and an ego, because there's level of certainty and, confidence interval from the, statistician sort of mindset.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, that's a good perspective and thought. So with this guide to joy and closing in with our time, what would you leave into the guide, right? Is there some sort of quote or motto or intention or perspective? What do you feel would be beneficial to your former self, current self, things like that?
So, one of my favorite quotes of all time is whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're right. And if you're going around telling yourself that you can't do this, you will convince yourself that you can't and you won't be able to do it. So that's one of my favorite.
Cool. Awesome. Well, Randy, thanks so much for your time and perspective. I'm going to probably make some trips once a month and do some fun things, but put some links and ways to find you, and we'll see you out there raising capital.
Awesome, Paul. Thanks so much for having me on the show. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks, Randy. Take care.
Thanks for joining the Investor's Guide to Joy today, where we aim to change your life by 1 degree in each episode. These days, I'm raising funds for oil and gas syndications, a luxury short-term rental super property syndication, which is a lot of fun, and managed by Luxury Desert Escapes. I also help people get what they want through finance, mindset, and action to help them eliminate worry, build better habits, create their life, and live their life. If any of these things seem of interest to you, or you just want to chat, connect with me. Let's chat more. Until we see you again.